Greetings, all my duckies out there. I'm Duuz-Diz-Din, back with another DuckTales 2017 episode review. This time it's Season two's Episode 16, titled The Duck Knight Returns. Now, the title of this episode is actually some I don't know if it was purposely done or if it's just because the Dark Knight Returns. It's just such a great, kind of shadowy kind of retelling of a character story, because that's what started all the gritty reboot reimaginings. Just the depiction of Batman as this gritty, serious crime fighter, returning hardened and tough as nails. But this was actually the title of a Darkwing Duck comic that came out in 2010, which was kind of like made as almost like a continuation of Darkwing Duck. Just this, continued series just to see him go on, to prevail, to rise back from the shadows after a long hiatus for the character, which was done by, written by Ian Brill, did the original version, Aaron Sparrow did the retelling, revised version, and illustrations by James Silvani, which, you actually see certain elements of that old story in this as well, in a lot of ways. But in the story proper, we open up in Saint Canard, or at least what looks to be an approximation of Saint Canard to a certain degree. But we come to find that, there's this, I guess, orphanage, this, kitten orphanage, of course, that's underneath, and underneath that orphanage, a devious mastermind is planning to blow it up for, I guess, shits and giggles. But naturally, Darkwing Duck appears from out of the shadows, ready to take down this bad guy. Surviving all these landmines and stuff, just showing how, tough and how he will prevail through every kind of obstacle that might come his way. And once he manages to get to the villain and he unmasks him, it's actually himself, which all things considered is kind of a spoiler in certain ways. But you come to find out that this is actually being shown at a bit of a, presentation with a few, Darkwing Duck fans in the mix. But this is actually for a, grand opening of this kind of sofa and cushion, emporium. It was actually supposed to be one of the dudes from Ottoman Empire, one of the series, in the, this universe. But I guess they canceled at the last moment, and they ended up getting the, Darkwing Duck character of this universe, or at least the actor, Jim Starling, once again played by Jim Cummings. Jim Starling, Jim Cummings. And it's kind of true. It's kind of shown that he's kind of like a washed up. He's a has been. Only older people are really into him from back in his older days and all that, which doesn't sit well with Jim Starling. One fan actually is really freaking out right next to Launchpad, who's also in attendance. And while Launchpad tries to, talk the guy down to get him to actually calm down in order to meet Jim Starlin, we see Launchpad's thing is the fact that he keeps fainting every time he has an opportunity to see Jim Starlin. And when the one fan tries to get in an autograph, it's obvious that Jim is all about just getting his, reviving his presence, truly making a comeback for the most part. And as soon as he sees Dewey, who came along with Launchpad, he feels that, okay, yes, younger kids will actually be into my brand and all that. But Dewey makes it known that he's only there for Launchpad. And when Dewey takes a picture of the unconscious Launchpad and Jim Starling, we come to find out that Darkwing Duck is actually trending on social media. And as it turns out, it's because there's a Darkwing Duck movie in the works at the moment. That's getting ready to be launched, much to the fact that Jim Starlin actually had no knowledge of this, but he's all for this, as he feels that this is the long-awaited revitalization of his series and brand. And he actually has Launchpad and Dewey drive him to the movie studio, although Launchpad can't help but continuously fall, just pass out at the fact that he's driving around Jim Starlin. But Starling is all too, ready to just get right back into the limelight and all that good stuff. Just to, show people that he's a true star. But Dewey asked the million-dollar question, why is he only finding out from social media? Shouldn't they have contacted him for a movie deal? And we come to find out that it is Scrooge himself who owns the studio that's in production of this movie. And that he has a big named, movie director named, Alistair Borswan, who's voiced by Edgar Wright of all people, which still takes me off guard to this point, because it's just like Edgar Wright, and it's obvious that he's a parody of Christopher Nolan, but you got an actual movie director to be a pretend movie director. Like, what? And Edgar Wright, if you didn't know, he did the screenplay for Ant-Man. He's the one who directed Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, and just some fairly good movies out there. And he's just really all about the dark, gritty reimagining of The Dark Knight. But it's honestly kind of making fun of itself to a certain degree with all the dark, gritty reboots, and the fact that the DuckTales 2017 series is a reboot in and of itself, but Scrooge isn't too happy with all the money that Alistair is, using for this production, as he simply wanted to make productions for workplace safety videos, not some big budget movie. And Alistair is already over budget, but Dewey busts in and is just like, how could you not tell me you own a movie studio? And Scrooge is just like, well, because of a situation exactly like this, where Dewey immediately wants to be in on the action. But when Jim and Launchpad come in to talk to the director, Alistair, about what they'll be incorporating into the actual series, Alistair uses this moment to show an actual preview, a trailer for the movie. And it looks very much like The Dark Knight Returns, very dark colors. It's like allusions to a lot of mid-2000s movies, like, The Dark Knight Returns, Daredevil, that series with, which, funny enough, both characters, Batman and Daredevil, have been played by, oh god, why am I forgetting his name? Had the same, main actor for one moment, for a little while at least. And it's just, Launchpad is immediately horrified, because it's just like, Darkwing's out there scaring people. We have this Commissioner Gordon-esque character who's just like, oh, you can't go around just scaring people, bringing fear into their lives and all that. And, Launchpad immediately writes off this movie because he feels that it's not true to the Darkwing Duck character, which, man, this got really meta really fast. But, Alistair is all about the grittiness. He feels that's the only way to really show off the true depth of the character. But, Jim is completely on board with it. He's all for this grittier matching because he feels like it paints him in a really interesting and serious light. But Dewey says he's completely off of it because he feels that nothing really in it appeals to him for the most part. And he uses this as a moment to say that he should be incorporated into the movie itself. And Scrooge, to a certain degree, agrees because of the fact that, well, kids like Dewey are kind of the target demographic, so if he's lost on it, then it's a complete, it's a complete wash. So Dewey ends up being given command over the last half of the movie, and while Jim tells Alistair that he's on board with whatever Alistair wants to go with. Alistair makes it known that Jim is not the star of the movie. They've already pretty much gotten most of it done except the finale. And we even see the introduction of the, fan from the earlier in the episode has been actually he been the actual primary Darkwing Duck actor in this movie, which Jim of course responds in a very professional manner to, which only gets him kicked out of the studio. But Launchpad wants to help Jim, take back over the production and show people what Darkwing is all about. So Jim Sterling dons his Darkwing Duck costume and decides to have him and Launchpad infiltrate, the studio, imprison the actor, and have Jim, pretend to actually be the true actor and just, record things the way they want to do it, which Launchpad isn't originally on board with because a lot of their tactics don't really sound heroic. But Jim dresses up like a mail carrier, but once he starts monologuing, the security guard named, of all things Tad, it's just like, hey, what are you here for? And he doesn't seem to really know who Darkwing Duck is. While this is going on, Launchpad grapples into the building. And so Tad is just like completely unaware of who Darkwing Duck is. And if you don't know the joke here, that's the voice of Tad. This character is voiced by Tad Stone, the creator of Darkwing Duck. That's the in-joke there. But Tad can call security on Jim while Launchpad infiltrates the actor's dressing room, only to get stuck himself. But once he starts crying out for help, in comes the actor, having a natural affinity for wanting to save people. But once he starts to question why Launchpad's in his trailer, a fight breaks out basically, when Launchpad kind of spills the beans that he's there to kind of imprison the actor for the most part, because he feels this is the best way to, show the heroic side of Darkwing Duck. Only for the actor to be like, well, that doesn't make any sense. Imprisoning someone doesn't really show off any kind of heroic side of anyone. But once they get to fighting, they start to kind of try to dodge around several memorabilia that the actor actually has. I also love the fact that there's an NES in the corner there. That's great. But various figures and comic books, that really show off how much of a fan this actor is. And once Launchpad actually gets a good look at everything here, he's just like, oh, well, you're just about as big of a Darkwing Duck fan as I am, with the various memorabilia that he has all over the place. And as as Jim continues to run from the cops, Dewey continues to kind of spew out his revisions for the movie, along with dancers and a dance scene by a young, plucky sidekick for the most part. Meanwhile, Launchpad and the actor are, having their own little, play date for the most part. And they even start reminiscing about this old lunchbox that the actor has. And we even have this little montage done in the art style. I have to assume this is artwork done by James Silvani, who does a lot of Darkwing Duck comic books for IDW, because it is totally in his art style, down to the colors and everything, where, the young actor would watch episodes of Darkwing Duck, see him go up against his various rogues gallery like Quackerjack, Bushroot, Megavolt, and the Liquidator, and just show down with them and be beaten to a pulp. But he'd always get back up again. That's what he ended up being taught. And even when bullies would knock him down and take his stuff, and just, ridicule him, he would always get back up and do what he had to in order to, fight for what was right. And, that's why he takes so much stock in everything, why he's so dedicated to this film, because he wants to inspire kids the same way he was inspired, which is a wonderful message. That's a beautiful message for children. Honestly, do it for future generations. Inspire others the way you were inspired, which honestly takes such a nice note to this character for the most part. Whereas the character of Jim, Darkwing Duck, the original character, was always a duality of a character. He would be very selfish in a lot of places, but he could always be so very selfless in so many other places, especially in regards to the little girl that he adopts for the most part, Goslin. But this character is really showing his, very caring and touching attributes. And this even kind of inspires Launchpad for the most part. As, this actor is just feeling down on the fact that Jim isn't on board with the movie, but Launchpad says that this is the perfect time. They should ally themselves with Jim in order to get him on board with the movie and make the best production they can for future generations. And as Jim does his best to dodge and defeat the security guards, Launchpad meets up with Dewey in order to get their production off the ground, because they feel that Jim will gladly go along with the plan because, he'll be inspiring others and Dewey will get to do his thing. But once Jim meets up with the actor and the plan is explained, Jim just slams the actor into a, broom closet or something, having gone basically completely mental, feeling that he should be the only one filling in the role of Darkwing Duck, with a very familiar gleam in his eyes. And as Dewey gets his, almost Broadway musical-esque production underway, Alistair is completely not on board with all the revisions that Dewey has made. Although Scrooge ultimately, agrees, but that's only because he feels that the villain's mustache isn't twirly enough, pointing out the Megavolt revamp, who looks very much like a parody of Bane from the Dark Knight trilogy. But once Alistair talks to who he thinks is the actor, he tells the actor that, to stick to the original script where Darkwing takes a knee in defeat. Although, Jim Sterling is completely not on board with that. And when Launchpad asks about what happened with the actor, Jim tells him that the actor stubbed his toe and gave up and went home, which goes completely against everything that Launchpad just heard from the guy a few minutes ago. So he definitely knows Jim isn't being forthcoming about this whole production. And once their production does get underway, it's this very interesting scene where, Darkwing is taking on the villainous Megavolt who's threatening the city. And once we get to the moment where Darkwing is supposed to take a knee, he, decides to just ad-lib and go in and just punch out the villain to show that Darkwing never gives up and, really get in the limelight, only for Jim to knock the Megavolt character over into one of the props that starts this massive fire, completely destroying the production for the most part. And when Alistair goes to stop the recording, Darkwing is having none of it. Jim has lost his mind and is not having the movie stopped for anything. No matter who gets hurt in the process, the Darkwing movie will be filmed with Jim Starling in the main role. But Launchpad, protects Alistair, having lost a lot of faith in his hero for the most part. But in comes, the actor in the Darkwing Duck form, and he, gives a great monologue. Up until this point, the actor for this the actor who does the voicing of this actor, hasn't really had a really Darkwing Duck sounding, he's had this kind of, not quite say on the same level as Jim Cummings, but then he starts to, when he really gets into the monologue for the most part, he really gets into the groove, and he really shows off what he can do, and this actor is it's Chris Diamantopoulos, a very Greek sounding name, which is his heritage and all that. But he once he really starts stepping in that Darkwing Duck role, he nails it. He nails that voice and is almost indistinguishable from Jim Cummings' performance to a certain degree. But Jim is going for this more manic kind of characteristic, which very much sounds like something else. And he's all for just taking down this stand-in, and Alistair continues to film this because he's just like, oh, this is gold, but he wonders why the actor is drawing the guy's attention, and Scrooge explains it's because he wants to get everyone else out of harm's way. And once the electric gun starts to kind of break down on Jim, the actor and Launchpad form a plan where Launchpad will go up and turn on the rain machine to put out the fire, while the actor draws Jim Starling's fire. So the actor pops out, Launchpad makes his way to the Rainmaker, and unfortunately the actor is actually standing on some explosives, but because he has so much determination and resilience, very much like what we saw of the true Darkwing Duck, the actor never gives up. Whether he's shocked, exploded, has a piano fall on him, Jim starts to just wonder, why won't you go down? But the actor continues to say that he never gives up. He may fall, but he will always get back up again. And it gets to the point where the machine, the device starts to overheat and explodes, so it becomes a fist fight between two Darkwing Ducks. As Launchpad finally makes his way to the Rainmaker to put out the fire, finally, Jim Starling loses it and starts brandishing a chainsaw, with this manic look in his eyes, which reminds me of something, I just don't know what. But once he goes in to try to kill the actor, Launchpad falls from the rafters and gives this very nice speech about what Darkwing truly meant to him, how Jim has kind of lost his ability to distinguish what truly made him a hero in the first place. Unfortunately, this speech is kind of interrupted by the fact that the machine behind him is starting to overload because of the rain and is about to explode. And when Jim wonders why Launchpad just keeps monologuing and doesn't notice this, the actor gives a very nice answer, that because he's your biggest fan. And Jim takes a look at himself and just realizes that he's not acting like the hero he's supposed to be. And when the actor goes in to save Launchpad, Jim saves both the actor and Launchpad, only to be caught up in the blast of the device, seemingly killing him for the most part. And as the fire is put out, Alistair finds the flash drive for the, last half of the movie. But once he puts it in, it's only a recording of Dewey doing the eye-to-eye dance from a Goofy movie. Much to Dewey's delight and Alistair's chagrin. And Scrooge basically calls off the whole production as he feels like he's lost too much money on it already. And as the actor and Launchpad lament the fact that the whole entire project was a bust. The actor feels like he let his hero die and now he'll never get his big break. Launchpad tells him that, but you should just get up again like you always said. Maybe actually try superheroing for real. Become the real Darkwing Duck. And once Launchpad says that, well, if Gizmo Duck can do it, why not you? And the actor says that, oh yeah, I'm much better than Gizmo Duck, showing off a little bit of that original rivalry in the original series where, Darkwing wasn't too much of a fan of Gizmo, as he felt that Gizmo would upstage him in certain situations. But he ends up signing some memorabilia for Launchpad, and he signs it Drake Mallard, the actual name for Darkwing Duck in the original series, which is such a great little scene, because I noticed throughout the entire episode they never referred to the dude by name. I'm just like, what, what's this guy's name? And to find out it's Drake Mallard, and I love the fact that Launchpad's like, I never heard of you. It's just such an awesome Easter egg. But we come to find out that Jim Sterling, it actually fell into the sewers, and with various chemicals and sewer water falling on him, the colors of his suit start to run, and we find out that this Jim Sterling, feeling that this whole situation was a setup by Drake Mallard, decides that he will do it. He will play the part of the villain, giving rise to Negaduck. Yes! Oh, I love that final part. The rise of Negaduck. That's fantastic. Because Negaduck has always had a fluctuating history. Originally, he was actually a split off between Darkwing, where you called created Duck and Negaduck, as Darkwing was split into two entities, his evil side Negaduck and his positive side, regular Drake Mallard. And then once that Negaduck got defeated, he was so popular and so liked by the writing staff, they brought Negaduck back in from the Negaverse this time around. So, it's running with that theme of that fluctuating backstory for Negaduck, where here he is the original actor for Darkwing Duck, transformed. And, it's the perfect role for Jim Cummings, because Jim just has such a great diabolical voice, because he played Dr. Robotnik in Sad AM, Sonic the Hedgehog, great diabolical voice. He played the original Negaduck. He played Darkwing and Negaduck. So here he can go ham with the Negaduck role. Even him saying it's just like, if that's the role you need me to play, I'll play it. Jim Sterling just pushing the role off to what you would call it, I can never remember his name, Chris Diamantopoulos, and, just saying, you can be Darkwing, but I'll be Negaduck. And, it even runs with a lot of themes here, where Alistair was saying, the greatest villain for a hero is himself, and all the parallels and the little moments here and there. Though I will say, I only like Drake Mallard's rebooted costume in certain angles. I am not the biggest fan of it, honestly. It can't beat that old, button-up suit jacket, but, it also runs in line with that Dark Knight Returns kind of situation of, you live long enough to see yourself you either die a hero, or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain. And the way that, Negaduck ended up kind of going out to a certain degree here is very much reminiscent of the way that Harvey Dent, was transformed in The Dark Knight, or even the, creation of Basil Carlo, of being an actor who was very much, who ended up losing his mojo and going crazy and all that. Just so many allusions to The Dark Knight. It's literally fantastic. And the whole bleeding away to purple, very reminiscent of seeing Joker go into the vat and having his colors morph and run and all that good stuff. Just so many good allusions to, various superheroes' origin stories, villain origin stories. Now Negaduck is kind of like this tragic figure rather than just being evil Darkwing. He's got this hint of tragedy behind it now. But it was so great to hear Jim Cummings. God, they had to name him the same person. Jim Cummings in that role again. But you could hear his voice slowly shifting to a more darker tone and various, if you knew anything about Negaduck, you started to pick up on the fact of this transformation, as when he beat up, Drake, shoving him into that closet, that's when his eyes went all crazy, in the same way that Negaduck's eyes went crazy, and he wielded the chainsaw just like Negaduck wields the chainsaw. It's just always great. And the fact that they even had the original creator of Darkwing Duck, Tad Stone, in this actual episode, that was fantastic. And once again, another allusion to Powerline, with Dewey doing the eye-to-eye dance at the end of a Goofy movie. Like, dude, just do it. Just do it. You're teasing us enough already. Oh man, it's great. It is literally the greatest thing ever. But I've gushed on enough. If you're still watching this, good on you for sitting through 30 minutes of me rambling. But tell me your thoughts in the comment section below. How did you feel about this episode? If you are a Darkwing Duck fan, or if you are new to Darkwing Duck as a whole, how did this make you feel? Do you want to rewatch the older Darkwing Duck series maybe? Or, that would be great. Do it, do it, do it, do it, do it. Or even read the Darkwing Duck comics. Man, I want every bit of memorabilia that Drake Mallard has in this series. Comic books, all the various toys and posters. I would love it. I would love it, love it, love it. But tell me your thoughts in the comment section below. If you like this video, leave it a like. If you didn't like it and just feel that I've rambled for far too long, feel free to give me a dislike. Do it, do what you have to. And how about subscribing and hitting the bell icon? That way you never miss out on another DuckTales episode review. I promise they'll be shorter. I promise. There was just so much to talk about here. And if you want to find me on social media, just Google Duuz-Diz-Din. I am everywhere, for better or for worse. And until the next video, just remember that the only thing you have to fear is yourself. And how scary could that be? Bye-bye.